Maybe we'll play it one day.
Yes.
That night, Chrysanthemum dreamed that her name was Jane. It was an extremely pleasant dream. The next morning, Chrysanthemum wore her most comfortable jumper. She walked to school as slowly as she could. She dragged her feet in the dirt.
Chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum.
You guys, she wrote. She even looks like a flower, said Victoria as Chrysanthemum entered the playground. Let's pick on her, said Rita, pointing. Let's smell her, said Joe. That's not very nice.
They're very mean.
Chrysanthemum,
Cried.
what do you think she did? What do you remember earlier in the story? She was sad.
Wilted.
She wilted. She did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She thought it was absolutely dreadful. The rest of the day was not much better. During nap time, Victoria raised her hand and said, "A chrysanthemum is a flower. It lives in a garden with worms and other dirty things." "Thank you for sharing that with us, Victoria," said Mrs. Judd. "Now put your head down." "I just cannot believe your name," Victoria said as the students lined up to go home. "Neither can I," thought Chrysanthemum miserably. "Welcome home," said her mother. "Welcome home," said her father. "School is no place for me," said Chrysanthemum. "They said I even looked like a flower. They pretended to pick on me and smell me." "Oh, pish," said her mother. "They're just jealous and envious and begrudging and discontented and jaundiced," said her father. "Who wouldn't be jealous of a name like yours?" said her mother. "After all, it's absolutely perfect," said her father. Chrysanthemum felt a trifle better after her favorite dessert, chocolate cake with buttercream frosting.
That sounds good.
I think I like that better than macaroni and cheese and ketchup.
Another evening filled with hugs and kisses and parcheesi. I guess that must be a fun game, you guys. That night, Chrysanthemum dreamed that she really was a chrysanthemum. She sprouted leaves and petals. Victoria picked her and plucked the leaves and the petals one by one until there was nothing left but a scrawny stem. It was the worst nightmare of Chrysanthemum's life. Chrysanthemum wore her outfit with the 7 pockets the next morning. She loaded the pockets with her most prized possessions and her good luck charms. Chrysanthemum took the longest route possible to school. She stopped and stared at each and every flower.
Chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum.
The flowers seemed to say. That morning, the students were introduced to Mrs. Twinkle. What kind of teacher do you think Mrs. Twinkle is? Just by looking at the picture.
A fun one. A music teacher.
I think you're right. Mrs. Twinkle, the music teacher. Her voice was like something out of a dream, as was everything else about her. The students were speechless. They thought Mrs. Twinkle was an indescribable wonder. They went out of their way to make a nice impression. What other things do you notice about Mrs. Twinkle?
Her tummy has a face on it.
Yeah, it does. What else about her tummy?
There's music. It looks really big.
Mm-hmm.
She's not gonna have a baby.
I think she's pregnant. She's gonna have a baby. Mrs. Twinkle led the students in scales. Then she assigned roles for the class musical. Victoria was chosen as the dainty fairy queen. Rita was chosen as the spiffy butterfly princess. Jo was chosen as the all-important pixie messenger. And Chrysanthemum was chosen as a daisy. What's a daisy?
A flower.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty flower.
Yeah. It's kind of similar to a chrysanthemum. They're
Mhm.
both flowers. Chrysanthemum's a daisy. Chrysanthemum's a daisy. Jo, Rita, and Victoria chanted, thinking it was wildly funny. Chrysanthemum, how do you think she felt? What did she do? She wilted. She did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She thought it was absolutely dreadful. What's so humorous? Asked Mrs. Twinkle. Chrysanthemum was the answer. Her name is so long, said Jo. It scarcely fits on her name tag, said Rita, pointing. I'm named after my grandmother, said Victoria. She's named after a flower. My name is long, said Mrs. Twinkle. It is, said Jo. My name would scarcely fit on a name tag, said Mrs. Twinkle. It would, said Rita, pointing. And, said Mrs. Twinkle, I'm named after a flower, too.
Wow.
You are? Said Victoria. Yes, said Mrs. Twinkle. My name is Delphinium. Delphinium Twinkle. And if my baby is a girl, I think you're right, she's pregnant.
Mhm.
She's going to have a baby. I'm considering Chrysanthemum as a name. I think it's absolutely, what do you think she thinks?
Perfect.
Perfect. Chrysanthemum could scarcely believe her ears. She blushed, she beamed, she bloomed.
Chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum.
Jo, Rita, and Victoria looked at Chrysanthemum longingly. Call me Marigold, said Jo. I'm Carnation, said Rita, pointing. My name is Lily of the Valley, said Victoria. So all those things are flowers, different kinds of flowers. Chrysanthemum did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She knew it. And there's an extra part to the story. Does anybody know what this word is? It's kind of complicated.
Epilogue.
It's called an epilogue. And we'll talk more about this, but an epilogue is kind of like an extra little tidbit that the author adds in at the end, kind of like to tell you what happens after the story. So, let's read it to find out what the author has to say. Overall, the class musical was a huge success. You guys remember they were doing a class musical?
Mm-hmm.
And what was Chrysanthemum?
A daisy.
Mm-hmm. You can see her up here. Chrysanthemum was absolutely perfect as a daisy. Victoria made only one mistake. She completely forgot her lines. As the dainty fairy queen, Chrysanthemum thought it was wildly funny, and she giggled throughout the entire dance of the flowers. Eventually, Mrs. Twinkle gave birth to a healthy baby girl, and of course, She named her
Chrysanthemum.